I just wanted to start by, thanking you guys for coming out and thanking you guys as caregivers, or even as you becoming a caregiver. It's a big job. It can be heavy and stressful. I've been there personally, not just as a nurse. I've been a nurse for 25 years, in different roles, but caregiving for 3 of my members of my family who have an Alzheimer's. One just very debilitated. It is a lot of stress, and as an only child, I know what it's like to be the only person responsible for that. So I know the burden of that as well. But hopefully you're not finding yourself in a situation where you're the only one to do it. If you are, there are resources to try and help you with that. Therefore, I asked Christine, who is over our connection programs, which offers some assistance. Extra support for those people that are out there, either on their own or just need extra support, help, and resources. Is there any questions to lead off that you guys have right off the top? A subject that you thought putting on the list that you have, I want to add?
Not yet.
All right. I know as you've assumed this caregiver role, you're finding out all kinds of things. How many of you here are the lone caregiver?
Sure.
But how many of you here are the lone caregiver, the only caregiver, primary? Do you have any family, friends, anybody?
My wife, but we lived in a strange situation, so she can't stay with you.
Gotcha.
So.
Oh, you was, yeah.
Yes.
Yes. I thought I recognized. I'm sorry. Family caregivers, are an immense contribution. So you should always pat yourself on your back, even if you feel like you're being defeated. And hands down to you, and claps for everything we do. You're appreciated way more than you know. It's estimated that your worth for unpaid services is $470 billion over the country. It's eye-opening when you think about it. You have folks that provide in-home care or nursing tasks at home to try to keep their loved one at home. It's very eye-opening. With your responsibilities, with tasks, if you have someone you can reach out to as a caregiver first to have support, like say you have siblings or there's a niece or a daughter, anybody that would be willing to be support to, it's always worth trying to get that extra support. You can manage long distance, or if you have a family that has multiple caregivers or multiple people in the family, like say you have multiple children, things like that. You could always sit down and have a family meeting and decide who could be the primary caregiver. Like if you're here and you live local, but you have a sister or brother that lives here, maybe they could help manage financially or the finances, and you take care of the caregiving role and focus on that.
And just to interject a little bit, for those who really are doing this kind of solo, a lot of us do have kind of that limited, we don't have family support. Everyone is being pulled in different directions where they just don't have the time or the ability to help. As a caregiver, it's hugely important to try to find opportunity for good self-care too, because you are the primary person the patient is depending on to be there to help manage those appointments and make sure things are running smoothly, and that's exhausting. It's difficult to be the primary person without having an opportunity for a break, and so I think in partnering with BPAS here, you will hopefully find that there are community resources out there as well, where you're not just providing good care for the patient, you're also providing good care for yourself, because you need to have an opportunity for caregiver relief. and to be able to step out of that role, even if it's just so very often to kind of recharge and take good care of yourself. So as much as we are trying to be here today to learn about how to provide that good care for our patient, we also want to take some takeaways with us on how to really have good self-care for ourselves as well.
Yeah, you can come on. Thank you. Yeah, with caregiving, like I say, it can be very daunting, so it is very important to take good care of yourself so that you can take care of others. And hopefully we can help you walk away with some of that today. In your book, in your handout, I know I put it in this binder and it kind of cuts off on the edge of some of the pages, so we can talk about it. We're not going to read it verbatim, so that way, when you get home, you can take it out. Keep it in the paper. But a lot of the caregiver one-on-one is just, identifying as a caregiver. If you're a primary caregiver and the person has confidence, doesn't have confidence, it's always important to make sure you establish your role as a caregiver. Whether that be POA, advanced directives, things like that, so that you can help with any say-so. Plus, when you go to doctor's appointments and things like that, you're able to be either in on the conversation or, have access to information you need to care for the patient. I don't know if you have any other things to add to that, but.
So we do at Rockridge Area Hospice also help with advanced directive planning. And so if you find that you're in a position where you're needing support to do an advanced directive, you'll see in your literature there that we have 5 wishes. It is one of the most commonly used medical advanced directives. It's a good conversation starter for friends, family, those in your life who maybe haven't dived into having that conversation yet. You'd be surprised at how many people have made it this far in life and they haven't talked about what they would want should a serious illness take place, or if that's already happened, what they want their medical journey to look like. And so I would strongly encourage you, once you leave the seminar tonight, you go home, you start looking through the information, or if you already have directives in place, maybe you did them 20, 30, 40 years ago, taking the time to look, having that conversation and reflecting on, would I still want what I wanted 20, 30 years ago? Is it time to change that and make some updates to what I would want my end of life journey and medical journey to look like? But this is a document here in front of you that does not have to be notarized. It just needs to have 2 non-family witness signatures. It's very easy to navigate and really allows for you to have the opportunity to go into very specific detail of what you want your journey to look like. It's a good tool to have in place.
So we placed one of these, it's called wishes in the front of the book. Plus a, like I said, a Rockridge Area Hospice connections, care based. With their information as well. Again, to touch on like what Christina was talking about, self-care is very important. Things you can, like I said, it's stressful, but you need to make sure you get some rest, get some sleep. I know some of you may find yourself in situations where the person you're caring for doesn't sleep well, or is up and down or restless, especially if you're caring for someone with dementia. Sometimes they tend to sleep during the day, not at night. They get restless at night. Or just as they get older, some tend to cat nap a lot during the day, and so therefore they don't sleep well at night, even if they don't have to do stuff. Depression is one of the most common side effects. And I wouldn't say resentment, but agitation, depression, and maybe some agitation can present as a caregiver because you are tired, you get wore down. If you don't have that assistance, it can, like I said, it can be stressful, but it's important that you try to take some time to step away, find things to bring you back centered, whether it be, sit, find somewhere to sit, maybe while the person's taking a nap or resting, read a book, listen to music. If you can find some help with respite, care, having someone come, just to give you time, if you just go out by yourself to have a cup of coffee, or go out and meet a friend to have a cup of coffee. Just making sure you're taking care of yourself in that way. There's also like deep breathing exercise and yoga classes. I'm not sure how many people are into that kind of thing. Or you can even find yoga apps, relaxation apps on phones now. Taking a walk. Sometimes it's just calling somebody. If you have a friend or someone that you rely on, or a confidant. Without expressing too much information from your patient. I mean, obviously, if it's family, you can talk about it, but try to respect the patient with, privacy without going into too much detail. Talk about, so you can just express those feelings. You have someone to talk to. I told you about read a book, journaling, anything that refreshes your soul. Make sure you're getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep if possible. Yeah. Support groups, eating well. I know BPAS here does Meals on Wheels, so if you need support with meals, they can help get you signed up for that. I know she told me today they're up to delivering like 109 meals out. It's pretty high for them, she said. So each talk with that. Any of you taking care of anyone with, or have taken care of anyone with dementia, Alzheimer's? We got some of those tips are in the book as well that I gave you for the ideas for relaxation. Here, just to step back for a second. And then, of course, we have Alzheimer's caregiver tips in this book. These are some great tips for taking care of patients who have Alzheimer's. Even comes in handy with dementia. Things like making eye contact with the person, but calling them by their name. Not choosing not to argue with the patient. Try to reorient if they're in the stage of where you can reorient, because sometimes patients with Alzheimer's, they also go through stages from, they're at a stage where they know they're forgetting things, so they don't need to be reminded of that. But you can just say, we talked about that before, or general reminders are considered for patients with beginning Alzheimer's or dementia, or any kind of confusion going on. Obviously, if they're doing anything that might be harmful to them or things like that, you can try to re-engage or reorient as much as possible. Sometimes it's a matter of figuring out what's wrong, like, are they uncomfortable? Have they had an accident? Are they tired? Are they hungry? Things like that. With Alzheimer's patients, you're going to notice behavior changes. Sometimes they begin to nest, start packing things away, or start getting comfortable with a certain spot, certain chair, and everything wants to be within hands reach. What I call that thing. Reassure them that you're here, that you're, try to be that constant, try to maintain a routine for them. They thrive on routine and their environment. Sudden changes, sudden movements, sudden new people, that's not always the best thing for them.
I think I'd like to chime in here as well, not just with our Alzheimer's patients, but also just recognizing that this is a new role for you all, and it's also a new role for your patient. It's not an experience that they've ever had to be in before. And so with a lot of the health changes that they're experiencing, it's also a loss of independence and loss of their abilities and having to be dependent. For a lot of our patients, that's difficult. It's difficult to acknowledge that they're no longer in a position where they're able to physically or cognitively do the same tasks that they used to. difficult and feeling like this may be a burden on their family and their loved ones for providing the care. And I think on the tail end of what Shauna is saying with our specific dementia Alzheimer's patients and our patients in general, is trying to find those small things where our patients and loved ones can still participate, still engage, allowing for that independence, allowing for those small tasks where they still can feel that they're contributing to the care. I think a lot of times some of those strong feelings of anger, frustration, agitation, resentment, it comes from the inability to be able to do the tasks that they once did. I see you shaking here. It's a very real thing. And so they are still trying to find ways where they can contribute and navigate this new journey too. I think we often as caregivers and on the receiving end of that care, build that tension and frustration of where do I fit into this and how is this care going to look, and seeing the strain that it's putting on caregivers. So any way that we can allow for patients to participate in care as best they can, allowing some measure of control and independence to still be had. It's a new journey for everybody.
If I may, something that's been happening more and more frequently in my situation are hallucinations. You know, he can stare at a wall and it's like he's watching TV. Do I support the hallucination? Do I tell him that the monkey is there? What do you do with that?
I think each case is a little bit different. We certainly see that in a lot of work that we do, and you all, feel free to chime in, but for a lot of patients, if it's not distressing, it's not causing the patient any type of fear, concern, we often don't try to present our truth as being what's real. If this is something that it's just, hey, Bob, there are monkeys on the wall. Okay. That's great. I mean, it's not causing concern, it's not causing distress, but for some patients, it can be a real concern. There are bugs crawling on the ceilings is distressing, it's upsetting. But patients can be difficult to redirect away from what they're currently living in as being true. We don't tend to try to navigate away if it's not distressing. But sometimes if it is appropriate and it is causing a true fear, trying to kind of ground and reset our patients that this is not necessarily, the reality that they're currently
He
seeing.
loves it. That's that problem. It's just, then he wants that, he asks me what I think of it. And I don't know what he's seeing. And so it's hard to engage.
Sometimes you can just say, like, patients like that I've had before, I go, can you tell me about them? Or, are they funny monkeys, or I mean, I know it sounds kind of silly, but it can help you too, see what they're seeing, because if they're seeing like these scary monkeys, then you might know that it's time to kind of prepare before they freak out about it, or if it's just
he's
funny
pretty happy
monkeys.
with what he sees.
Yeah. Then if he wants to talk about it, just ask him to tell you about it, and then kind of go from there. Because it's more, like she said, it's more distressing than you try to redirect. Or argue over it,
I don't know if you're familiar with T.P. Snow's work or not with dementia and Alzheimer's, but my daughter was a registered nurse, and at the time she was the director of nursing at a private place in Bedford. And I was interested in attending the workshop, and her boss said, yeah, tell her to come on. So I went for the whole day on that. And we did role playing. It was held at Friendship Manor. And one thing that stuck in my mind that she said when dealing with people, take your hand and touch them on the arm sometimes to get their attention, or to redirect their attention when you're trying to get their attention, just calmly, and then look right in their face and speak to them. She had been doing it for over 30 years, and she was an expert at this sort of thing.
Thank you. But I know that, caring for a loved one with Alzheimer's is difficult and challenging. And every situation is different, like I say, because there is stages to it. Some people progress faster than others. So you have to handle it situation by situation, and there's so many great resources out there. Alzheimer's Association, is super great. Where they can help with and have tons of tips as well, besides this tip sheet, you know, that we have in here. Next, we're gonna move on to some demonstration for, changing a patient. Which, moving a patient in the bed. Chair to bed, anything else somebody could think of? I mean, you had said transfer.
Wheelchair. Yeah,
Okay, we don't have a wheelchair here tonight, but we can demonstrate with a
Right.
chair,
yeah.
so. If you guys wanna come up,
We need to plug the bed in.
okay.
We really encourage at this point, any and all questions that you may have around getting someone, you know, from bed to chair, chair to bed. Safely ambulating, for some of you that may not be a concern at this point, but you may find in the near future, you know, as disease progression continues, as your loved one may show signs of decline, weakness, that some of these tricks and tips here may be beneficial. So certainly chime in questions.
No, the reason why the wings, so we can raise it. Well, and raise the bottom, just showing how gravity you can pull off in the net. Okay.
They also make these, they also make great slides, is what I call them, but they almost are like, they're sheet-like material. That you can purchase. Amazon has tons of things now to help you purchase care. It's like a goodie, why shower caps, bed pads, but they even have this slide thing now that you can put on the bed. If you go to full length for the patient. That's like a handle on each side. That can help you slide a patient up in the bed if you tend to be by yourself. They're also going to show you some tricks over here, if you guys want to come on up, show you some tricks.
Something else with all of our beds, they're hand cranks. And in order to bring the bed up itself, they're all hand cranks.
Now, if you're your hospital bed, you get, if you're gonna go to Lexington Restriction Center, which is like a local, if you're from our area, I'm not sure how many may come from somewhere else. They have the hospital, that from, like you said, a handbag of bed is typically a client there. And then there's overlays, you can use those managers, so which need to correct. Home parts for patients. You have a lot when that starts to become. Bedridden, there are supplies out there. And, help make it more comfortable. Increase in pressure off the. Lexington Prescription Center.
Okay.
But I know they do a lot of DME equipment. There's a lot of other places that do DME equipment too. We don't just solely support them. But they're going to say, Amazon is also become a huge supplier. Medical supplies, like I said, wipes, bed bags, linens, all kinds of things.
He's a volunteer place in Churchville.
What do you want to do?
Supply.
I'm sorry.
It won't go from my.
Correct. All the health program out of Churchville, Charlottesville, there's a place in Charlottesville as well that has a EMA program. Where they donate things out like wheelchairs, walkers, shower chairs, hospital beds, bedside commodes, transport chairs. The bed tables, kind of equipment that you may find.
I think, yeah.
And I don't have the links today, but that is something that we could get out to you all. Just to give you that information. I'll get that links out.
All right, so she's a very temperamental patient. So she's gonna sleep down and we need to get her back to the bed. But we need to adjust the. We need to adjust the chuck. The best way to position the chuck is between the knees. And actually, like it is right now, so the heaviest part of the body is the middle of the body. And if you keep the middle of the body on the chuck, you can pull her up better, you have better leverage. And if you have a hospital bed, then you can raise the feet, which makes it a little easier, but not everybody has a hospital bed. But, we're gonna pull her up like this, and she's gonna fly back down, and then we'll be back. Oh, let's pull her up in the bed with this. Oh, you don't want to? Yeah. All right, so we're gonna count to 3. 1, 2, and 3. Oh. Sorry. Okay. Slow down. You're gonna slide down again. Oh. Oh, come on now. Yeah, that's about how it is. Okay. Roll her over. We're gonna roll her over. We're gonna reposition this. So we just roll it up under, and then we'll roll her back over. And then we can pull this out. And then we would roll it again. Okay, we'll roll back over. All right, and sometimes you find that you've got too much on one side. I think it's sheet over too far. So we're just gonna chuck a little bit like this. And turn it back towards me, and she'll pull that out on that side, so she'll kind of be in the center of it. Then we're gonna pull her back up in the bed.
So
But
right
she's not
now,
gonna,
go ahead.
huh?
So go ahead.
She's not gonna help us, so we're gonna do it a different way. We'll raise her feet. All right, one more. This is good for one person. If you don't have any help, you can raise the feet of the bed all the way up. Gravity will help you pull her up. And you just get a hold to this and pull her up. Which really comes in handy when you're by yourself. You had to do that several times.
If you don't have one of the pink washable pads that you currently see us using right now, this is also something that our aides can show you how to use a flat sheet. If you have a flat sheet, most of us do at home. That you can fold and do the same technique of rolling, scooching under and using to pull.
Some of your hospitals and nursing homes have gone with that anyway, and not necessarily use an underpad because people complain of them being hot. So, a lot of people are going to using draw sheets and putty to draw your pads.
But they really come in handy for incontinent patients.
So that's another issue I'm starting to have to deal with is changing the sheets. While he's still in bed. And then we talked about this. So how would you, is it more like kind of roll them over, take half the sheet off, roll them back?
You need to change the sheet before he's in bed?
Yeah.
Okay, we think about that, we'll do it.
I didn't know maybe too, but wanted to talk about how you could, I have a draw sheet.
Things that you have come in, and when they make them, keep them.
I'm not gonna do it. Oh. They're often.
Yeah.
It's, yeah, and it's, yeah, she's over.
We don't have it. I'm gonna show you how to change the sheet with the patient in the bed. If a patient's wet and you gotta change the entire bed, that's what we're gonna do now. We're gonna change the bed and we're gonna change her at the same time. Kind of. Okay, so she tucked everything under. We're gonna roll her this way. And I'm pretending to take her diaper off.
And guys, we normally have on gloves this time too, we just do not have any here, so gloves are always a plus.
Here, I'm sorry, and then that's okay, right? You know, take it off, put it back on them. I won't let you fall.
All right, so,
And don't go.
all right, so I'm gonna put clean sheets on the bed. The best way to do this is as you're tucking it under her, this is gonna sound weird, but visualize the middle of the diaper lining up with the crack of the bottom. And then when you roll her over, it's gonna line up.
All right, I'll roll her back over.
The whole time you're doing this, you're telling the person, you know, what you're doing, right?
Okay.
Okay.
Especially your patients that are confused. Have you mentioned, okay, for those, because or have had a lot of fall. Because they'll start grabbing, and sometimes they get very scared of falling, or you don't let them fall.
Really nice.
Okay,
Again, in my situation, I can't get. to both sides of the bed. I see right now, they've got, people on both sides to roll back, right? That's not gonna happen.
Is he still in a position where he is able to assist at all as far as to hold on to the rail? If you are able to move him to one side, can he hold the rail long enough for you to?
He helps. He likes it when the aides, help. He doesn't like it when I try to help him. There's some personal boundaries.
He's still in bed.
Like, there's no way here.
Right.
Absolutely.
This one is solid.
Again, I don't know how far it.
Okay, if you don't have any chucks or if they've all been soiled, you can make a draw sheet out of a flat sheet. Just fold it in half. And then fold it in half again. And you do the same thing, you just line it up between here and here. All right, roll back to me. Okay, we'll roll back over. Okay, are you comfortable? I take that as no. Not really. Right, now, is there anything particular y'all want to see?
I don't know if this is now or if we're gonna hit on it later, but. The gentleman that I take care of, I have to use an external catheter on him. So we've just gone through a time where he's had a bad UTI. And the doctor said, because when I told the doctor that when he's laying in bed like this, I've got the external catheter on, and then the tube is coming down. The bag is lower than the catheter, but it still sits in the external catheter. And she said that's where he's getting the UTIs from, because it's sitting in the catheter, not coming down. But I don't understand why it's not draining.
Take it away, nurse.
Okay, so you said that it's.
They're external catheters, you like the condoms.
Mhm.
And so when I've got it, under his diaper, his depend. And then I make sure that the end of it with the extension tube is just outside of the underwear, so it's not blocking it. But like, for instance, in the morning when I come in, it's still all puddled at the top. I mean, there's still, urine in the bag. It's drained some.
It's not under the leg, is it?
No, no.
Yeah, we make sure the catheter
It's hanging off the bed, yes, it's hanging off the bed, but for some reason, the urine still pulls in the external cavity.
Texas cat.
I think they are called
Texas
that,
cat, yeah,
Mhm.
and sometimes that does happen.
I mean, I've got the bag lower than, the
Does he
cavity.
seem like he's getting drained? I mean, is he draining enough? Does he feel spend over or anything across the bathroom?
Oh, he fills the bag up every month, yeah,
His
so,
feet aren't elevated, are they?
no,
All right.
he's laying flat on the bed.
That might be why, because he's laying flat, so.
It could be maybe if you tilt it really a little bit, which is gonna be real good if he did a bed, so he turned every 2 hours.
Return a proper pillow behind
Yeah,
him.
couple pellet behind. Sometimes if you're too little, depending on how long it is, it's usually a standard, but sometimes it's not standard. It's hanging on the side of the bed. Sometimes if you leave it down here, it just kind of helps straighten it out a little bit.
Okay, yeah, because he's not in the hospital bed anymore, he's in his bed, I've got it on the floor, I've got the mattress and the box springs on the floor, so that if he rolls out, it's not.
That might be
Yeah,
why,
enough
it's not.
gravity.
Not
Not enough gravity. Okay, because he can't, if the bed is on the frame, he can't get in it because he can't walk. So we have to help him. He can stand up, but he's very weak with his legs, so we have to stand him up and then kind of bring him over and then he sits. So we can't do the bed on the frame, so that's why we have to put it on the
So
ground.
maybe if you prop him with pillows and
Mhm.
gravity.
It will help
it,
okay,
and keep it further down towards the foot of the bed,
okay,
since it's on
Yeah,
the
you
floor.
want to try to.
right, I know it, yeah.
Cut down on it.
Mhm. Yeah, okay, I'll try that then, I'll bring it down here.
Otherwise, they do make mattresses, you can do at Walmart,
Mhm.
that don't require a box spring.
Okay,
And you might be able to use that as more leverage to, for the this.
okay,
Because I know sometimes, the box spring adds that extra.
yeah. Right.
Bit of height, and then when you finally get to the point where you just kind of make it to the edge.
Yeah.
Right there, it like slides in the floor. So I know I've seen some people do that.
Okay. And then another problem I have with him is, in the mornings, he's laying down like that, he has arm strength, but he doesn't have any upper body strength, So getting him up is, it hurts my back. So what I do is I get under his neck with this hand and he holds me and then I pull him up. And then I take his legs and do it this way. Is that the proper way to do it? Okay.
If you're one person doing it, bring the legs out first like this. And then get up under the neck, and our hands are cold.
Okay, that was less awkward than.
We did make grab bars, if he's ever grabbed bars, and we make a
Yeah.
grab bar.
I've tried, he doesn't want that yet.
Okay.
I'm keep, yeah, okay, that's all good things, thank you.
Can't make them. Man. All right, so home she had to. Put her. Hand her on a bedside commode in her wheelchair. I'm sorry.
And I don't know, he said he's not ready for the kind of bar yet, for some occasions again, that's just kind of it's that independence, it's that what can I control and what do I still have the ability to do or not, right? Depending on how agreeable or not he is, sometimes it's also just having that conversation of, I am your primary caregiver. This is going to make it easy for you and for me so that you can continue to be in this position and be independent and live here in this setting where you want to be. Having that conversation, because the very real reality is if something happens to you, that could very well change the outcome of what his living situation may be.
But it's okay to say, I need it.
I've
It
found
helps me
that
help you.
he takes advice better from someone other than me or his brother.
My
You
husband,
can call
yeah,
him.
my husband has that magic touch.
The doctor will tell him he needs a grab bar for the aids,
Mhm.
if they come, they will tell him that he
Yeah.
needs to do this. And
And that it's not for him necessarily, this is for me, this is for me to be able to help you because I need this to be able to, so that it's not so much the condition as it is, I need this.
Okay. Okay, that sounds good.
All right, and I find this works better for me to put the bedside commode or the wheelchair here towards the foot of the bed. So I'll do the same thing, I'll bring her feet around. And I'm gonna set her up and I'm gonna do a one person, then a 2-person transfer. And I'll bring the chair up, so all I have to do is just pivot and turn. I'm
Always
gonna
make
put
sure
my
it's
knee
locked.
between her legs. And I'm gonna get up under her arms. You're gonna understand, but you're gonna kind of buckle too, okay? Don't buckle too much, because I'll be wedgie. Okay. Now I'm gonna count to 3. 1, 2, 3.
So you're grabbing the back of her pants,
Yeah.
okay,
But they make gate belts,
yes.
and you can order those.
Yes, I do have one, yeah,
Big one, big bags.
yeah, he didn't really like that, but, you know, he might not.
Again, it helps me help you.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I mean, they make all kinds now, they make just the regular gate belts, they make kinds of that handles all.
Yeah, I got the one with pants.
A lot of some of your, I know like some prescription for sale, I think, that's the family pharmacy does. So again, you can order them all day.
Right, so we're gonna do a 2-person transfer to put her back in the bed. So we're gonna bring the chair out. And we're gonna each get her under the arm like this and grab her here or her gate belt. And stand her and count. 1, 2, 3, bed forward. And then she'll hold her upper body and I'll get her feet. And we'll just put it and turn.
And then again, if you're in the bed then and you're skewered or you're not quite right, using those tools of how we're pulling the draw sheet to get them pulled back up or reposition.
Encourage them to help you as much as they can.
I do have to when I'm by myself,
I
yes.
know that people have loved ones that are just weak, unable, but that's a mobility that you can help maintain in child's body. Try to do it as much as you can. And like I say, they have half bars on these things, or you can just do a simple grab bar. Whichever helps, can help them help you. Taking the pad and using it to kind of tilt, to kind of give you that extra momentum if they can't help you as much.
Oh, I didn't think about that, yeah.
That's useful as
Okay.
well, like the draw sheet and pull it towards you. And then just get a hold to them and then you can let the sheet back, draw sheet or the pad back down.
We often you, I mean,
Use this.
About the price of it,
Kind of like this.
to kind of. Look at it, and that position, you're going to.
Yeah. I think when you're doing problems, forms on paper, so he doesn't.
And for a person that does a lot of squirming and sliding. If you bring the feet up a little bit, they can only go so far down. They won't, go all the way to the foot of the bed. I mean, a lot of the patients have their heads elevated, but if you elevate feet just a little bit, it'll keep them from sliding all the way down. So a lot of times they just keep squirming until they're at the foot of the bed or their feet are hanging down off the side.
Yeah, and you could probably put, if it's not a hospital bed, I guess you could like roll up a blanket or something and put between the 2 mattresses to elevate it. Okay.
And also, and realistically, a lot of times it is just one person trying to change the sheets or change the
Mhm.
person.
Yeah.
And so we would do the same thing like we did, except you would basically be making turns back and forth around the bed. But sometimes it happens when you're by yourself and that's the only way to do it. But you can also take pillows and prop them up on the side, or if you have to tuck anything under. And vice versa. And if they have rails, and of course you put a pillow there and they can roll over and help. But sometimes you're in a situation where it's just one person.
I have a problem with my husband backed up against the bed as though he's gonna get down in the bed and then he slides down onto the floor. And we're stuck. I can't get him up. So do you ever lose one?
That happens to people. That's what we're talking about. I was talking about with the height of the bed.
Okay, we've dealt with that. We've got a good height. he's fallen maybe 8 times in the last 2 months, not, but it's never a fall.
Slide
He
now.
always slides.
Get him up.
Well, that's what she's wanting to know.
Yeah.
Get from that sitting position.
How do you think you're go?
Well, if he's stuck, we call the rescue squad, because I have no option, so wedge himself.
So you're by
in
yourself.
Right. I can, but last night or 2 nights ago, we were 3.5 hours on the tour. And he was strong enough to try, his legs are weak, his upper body still has some strength, his legs are weak. So
Will a Hoyer lift go all the way to the floor?
he just doesn't want to give up, he keeps trying.
Well,
So,
swing.
Well, what about using your knee like you did earlier? Cause that's what I've had to do with Lewis. Like when I'm putting him in the car, I'll put my knee there underneath his butt and hold him up. Sliding, yeah. Have you tried that?
But you'd have to get all the way down to the ground to do it though, wouldn't you?
But I mean, before he gets up, when he's, I mean, I don't know, y'all are the experts.
Some things you can do, does he get up in a chair during the day or for breakfast?
he
or-
thinks he has to, and I think he's in denial, like, you know, there's nothing wrong, I never fall. So, that makes it hard to deal with things, so I, you know, I may change some things without asking him. Just because I need to, like Christina said, I need you to help me with it. But, I've actually thought recently of putting a ladder, a rung, the round rung ladder on the wall because he is tall. And he might be able to get himself up, so then we thought, what about a lineman's belt or a tree climber's belt that he can hook on? And climb up that way, because he likes to get out of the problem by himself. And he's strong enough to use his arms some. But we're having the rescue squad too many times, so
I think, one of the first things I would try is having to do leg exercises in a chair.
well, we're doing that, we're still there.
You know, the marching in place.
Yep, he's got an exercise step machine, he's up to 200 and some a day, I think. So he's generally better, but we still have him stuck on the floor.
Is he able, once he, because it sounds like he's sliding, so he's coming down, you know, when he's sitting down
Yeah.
like this, if he's able to get from a sitting position over to his knees, is he
Can't do
able
that,
to?
yeah, we're stuck with the kneeling, right, so that,
Can he bring his knees up? Like in a sitting position, bring
yeah,
it?
he can bring his knees up, yeah. Right, but he can't roll onto them or kneel on his knees.
Okay, but if he's like that. And I don't know if you'd be able to do this, would you be able to get? Let me straight. Like,
Sliding boots.
would you be able to get up under him like this and grab him from the, that you wouldn't?
No, I can't, I've had falls or back injuries.
Okay, all right.
So anyway, thank you for.
Has he had home health with,
Beg your pardon?
has he had home health come in with?
No, he's strong enough, and he denies that he has any problems anyway, so that's really not an option yet.
I have recently run into a personal situation with that with the parent, and my dad's a big man. He was actually in that sitting position. And my spouse and I had to go up and help my mom get him. We got a sheet and put behind him. And Charles got on one side and I got on the other, and we were able to help pull him up that. And again, my dad made really, really big, but we were able to pull him up by using a sheet and getting it behind his back. And him kind of helped being able to, we had his walker in front of him. And him kind of helping to be able to pull and push up.
Right.
And we were able to get him up that way without my mom having to call the squad. So,
But she didn't have a second.
Yeah.
Was he able to do something like our draw sheet, though, like what Holly is talking of, putting it behind, which would you feel that you would have enough, and could it be done with one person to have the upper body strength? To give him just a little boost if you.
would there be somebody else that you could call to kind of help do that?
Well,
Or no?
that it messes with his denial that there's a problem, it's just, you know, he hasn't admitted that he's 86 yet.
I understand.
Yeah, he's still 30.
How does he react when the rescue squad shows up?
Razzle dazzle, talks to them, jerks with them, everything's fine, thanks guys for coming in. He was with my show, and, yeah, he had no problem. They were here 7 times in like 4 weeks. We're just totally stuck, and sometimes he'll wade himself under something, and he's not strong enough to get himself out.
Is he in a regular bed?
I got the day bed because of all the wrought iron poles that he can grab onto, and he can do that sometimes. We tried, he can kneel if we can get cushions under him, but he keeps pushing the cushions away as part of trying to get on them. We haven't worked out a system. So I told him today I watched some videos and they all said, physical therapists all said, you need to practice, you need to get on the floor and practice getting up. Well, he has no problem being on the floor, so why? What the matter with you?
Yeah, that's a difficult situation when you're dealing with somebody that's in denial. Like when they're not ready to accept they're in that.
So what do you think of the ladder? I mean, I've got a really strong wall, I can put a rung ladder on. Does that sound like a bigger idea?
Would it be close to the bed? You say slides out of the bed.
Well, I would put it on the wall, where there's a space, the width of a ladder. And if he could scritch over to it and connect his lineman's belt, for lack of a better term, he's got enough strength, he can maybe pull himself up. That he could start to stand, and we've got small stools, we bring in furniture from everywhere as he's trying to get up, so I've got little stools I can put under his fanny. While he rests, and then he could do the ladder thing again, but the ladder thing, the only thing I've thought of, because he's got some arm strength and very little leg strength.
I think you have to make sure with putting a ladder on the wall, personally like a ladder, you're gonna make sure it's in studs. Because you don't want to depend on sheetrock.
Oh, sure, yeah, I've got studs, I've got a good one where I can do it.
I would be concerned, I will say truthfully, be concerned about him getting tangled.
Yeah, there's no plan B where he gets in trouble.
I would not personally recommend using that as an adaptive device to be able to try to get him, because unfortunately it may create a bigger issue than what we're currently dealing with.
So you've never seen any contractions?
Unfortunately, no, and this is not something that you were dealing with alone. Even patients that come on with us for hospice care,
Right.
caregivers are running into this situation, and we also would encourage calling 911 for lift assist. We would rather that you call and get the lift assist and not feel badly about that. That is part of our volunteer fire department's duty to assist when in need. And so whether you're calling once a month, once a year, like 6 days in a row. Don't put yourself in a position where you are going to cause further injury to yourself trying to get him up. And I think again, whether it's just you or if you don't have additional family that can come in and do kind of a family meeting, a care plan meeting, to just say, hey, we recognize that you want to be at home and we want you here. But we're putting ourselves at real risk of that not being a possibility if we don't try to make some changes with how we're getting from point A to point B. If there are difficult conversations to navigate, there are difficult conversations to have, but some of these adaptive ideas put us at greater risk.
Right. Well, I was just wondering if you knew anything. Another concern I have, and I don't mean to keep other people from contributing, but is how do you get him out of the house in a fire? You drag somebody that can't walk?
Yeah, you can throw a sheet on the floor, put him in a little sheet and drag him.
Okay, thank you.
Blanket, she's a little bit fast, but. Blanket.
So what about a plastic tarp? Is that better?
No.
Depends on what
If
you wear.
it burns, it's fine.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
Same thing, if you use a blanket, make sure it's not polyester.
fire blanket.
Yeah, I mean, you could use Mylar or something like that, but you really want to be careful about using material that will burn
Right.
more than help. But as far as the other lifting thing, I agree, making a homemade ladder sounds like a bad idea. My wife was telling me that Lexington Prescription Center has a floor to ceiling grab bar.
Yes, I've seen those, and
So maybe something like that, if he's got the arm strength,
Right.
that could just give you a little bit of assist, and then you can get in there with a gait belt.
but they don't dare expansion. They'll say you can pull on them for 300 pounds, but there's no firm attachment at the top. It's just a friction fit, a circle of
Yeah.
No, I don't like that.
Right.
See, I haven't looked at it.
Yeah,
It wouldn't
look
work
at
in my
it.
situation, but, yeah, no, if it can't be firmly anchored for.
Yeah.
Don't do it.
There's no holes in the middle. I've already checked that. I mean, I guess you could work it out, but
Yeah,
it's not.
you could go
easy.
to Rails End and, get metal. You have a little machinist shop down there
Yeah.
in McLaughlin, couple
Sure.
of metal flanges.
We have a machine shop. But we don't have any problems, so.
That's the problem.
Yes, that is a problem. It really is.
So, I mean, it's going back to Christine, you have to have that.
And if
That
it is
conversation.
something where you don't have family support and you have an upcoming doctor's appointment, or you can schedule just an annual checkup or a routine checkup, maybe talking with the physician, your NP, PCP.
I've done that, and he does his razzle dazzle. Right, we need to wait till his need is greater, I think. Cause he told this physical therapy was fine, he never falls, cause he slides, but he doesn't fall, so he says, I never fall, I didn't tell him he's on the floor for hours at a time. And so, because they're looking at him face to face and believing him. I've sent his physical therapist a note, that's a hard thing to write, but you're dealing with trust issues, take pictures.
On the floor.
I'm dead in the water anyway, so I don't have a whole lot. So I wrote and then nothing came of it. But my husband hasn't been back. He started with a physical therapist and I'm thinking once a week, once every 2 weeks. It's been 3 months because he doesn't have a problem. So why would you go to physical therapy? So I guess he needs to get worse so we can turn around and get better.
Now, is this physical therapist, somebody who went to outpatient therapy or home?
Yeah, and Lexington recommended by a chiropractor that he had been seeing. The one near the Red Hen, I don't remember that name.
Bodies.
Yes, it is, right?
Again, I would go back also to the exercises of working his legs,
Yeah.
That's the, I mean, I know he thinks he doesn't have an issue, but if he doesn't have an issue, he shouldn't end up in the floor.
And not that this is going to fix your situation.
Yeah.
Truthfully, sometimes it is just waiting for them to run out of steam.
Right, that's right. I know, I hate to see that. I feel like I'm waiting for him to go.
And unfortunately, sometimes, and then again, not to be so blunt with it, but for some of those patients where they're really resistant to it, unfortunately, sometimes an accident happens.
Yeah.
Where a conversation and you do your very best, so you can't feel guilt for trying to accommodate, trying to take care of him, trying to do what is best. Unfortunately, we see patients, take a fall that really changes the course of how things are going, or they just get to the point of disease progression where they don't have the strength to even do the little bit that they were doing. Sometimes it is just waiting for, to run out of that steam.
Yeah.
There's, unfortunately, this is something a lot of our patients and caregivers run into, and there's no good answer. We unfortunately don't have the right answer for this.
Well, at least I feel like I'm talking to people who know.
Oh, you're definitely not alone. By far, you're not alone. And that's why I say there's caregiver support groups in the area as well, so. I'm sure BPAS has information on that. If not, you're welcome to call our office and see if we, I'm sure we probably have some caregiver groups. Sometimes you can just go to a caregiver support group and talk about these things, almost like you're talking here. And come up with ideas.
I think Kendall has one, fourth Thursday.
Yeah, Kendall usually has one.
We just started a new one, a monthly dementia support group here as well. So that's gonna meet on Wednesdays, but I don't remember which week of the month. I think it's the third Wednesday of the month.
And I would let, dementia, most of them are classified as dementia caregiver workshops groups, but you will find that dementia, cancer, heart disease, whatever we're dealing with, just old age. a lot of caregivers are running into the same issues, no matter what the disease progression is, so don't let, that deter you from saying, I'm gonna come to this group. Because people are in the same situation, no matter what the disease progression is they're dealing with. Dementia though just sometimes makes it worse.
The challenge for me in a lot of those things, is just finding someone to be there while I'm not. And if you're talking about an exaggerated fall risk. Are you comfortable leaving him alone for 2.5, 3 hours? And that's what this is gonna end up being.
Well, at some point you have to bear the consequences of your action. So I do make it a little painful, just let him stay there. So that he needs help, but he has never needed it yet. And I guess that will be a terrible threshold when we come across that and he thinks he needs help.
That performance thing that you're talking about is. Something else that I know all about that.
He's a brilliant man. He's the president of his company. He can only walk 4 inches at a time and then stop and rest. It's that bad. One rotation of the wheel on his walker, and he stops and rests. But it's bad. Now, when he does his exercises, he might be able to walk 10 feet at a normal pace, but then he stops and he rests a long time. So he's trying, and I don't want to mess with that, we want that to be as long as we've got it. I just can't get him up before.
So the best answer is continue to call the squad as you have been.
Yeah.
And use that resource. I know that you probably feel bad doing so, but don't put yourself in a position where you end up causing injury to yourself trying to get them up.
Right, because then that could be bad.
Right.
Well, thank you.
I have a question on, does this happen a lot at night?
Any time of the day, he says it's a balance issue, so whenever he is standing, he's vulnerable to sliding off of something, or he might fall onto a chair and slide off because he didn't, get on right.
And it may seem silly, but not knowing medical and not trying to delve into that. As patients age too, just blood pressure changes, whether they're on medication or not, if he's trying to get up abruptly and start to navigate, just that change from having been in the bed or sitting and going straight to standing and moving causes balance issues and pressure changes that contribute to the falling.
I have to remind Lewis when I get him up, like when he comes up, and I have to remind him. You would think, like you said, it would stick in their mind, but I have to remind him, get your balance before you move. Because he'll come up, we'll get, I'll pull him up by his back of the pants to practice, walk. And he'll just start going. Now, wait a minute, Lewis, you gotta get your balance, because as soon as he starts moving, then he tips.
Yeah.
So, I think they called it tail or something like that. You have to remind them of things. So that's why I had to tell him all the time, because I guess, in regular, he's always just gone. So I have to remind him constantly to lock his wheelchair.
That's what Commissioner Strong said too. She said you got to constantly remind.
Yeah. I have to constantly remind him, don't forget to lock the wheelchair, Lewis. Because, he'll just go in the bathroom and then get up, with the handlebar.
They don't remember.
Yeah,
They just don't.
yeah.
Well, some of it's just human nature.
That's human
We
nature.
don't
Exactly.
everything, every action we do.
Mhm.
And especially when you're in that bed in particular.
Mhm.
Well, in denial.
And
Yeah.
I still give everything.
Yeah.
Denial.
So maybe remind me, just get your balance first.
That's not going over real well either. It's all right, I've got mother in. Not a kid.
Because it's on aspect one, right?
That's we gonna go into that with me, and sorry.
I know I can't do half of what I used to do.
Oh, yeah.
But I've really come to rely on the care team, whether it's people at hospice or whether it's his doctor. He takes their direction better than he does
Oh, yeah,
from me or my wife.
but he doesn't tell them the truth.
Wally never did either.
I'm
So the doctor
not,
just stopped asking and just told him what to do.
have you ever considered talking to his doctor without him being present?
I have done that.
And get, eyeball to eyeball and tell him, hey,
Yeah.
he's telling you this stuff, but this is the reality.
Right, I told him that. And my husband hasn't seen the guy since I told him, but I told him, you're gonna be manipulated, you're gonna have razzle dazzle, you're gonna have a great time. And you're gonna go nothing about what his issues are.
There are doctors in the area that are better at geriatric care than
Yeah.
others. So I don't know who your doctor is, but
We've got Step Line,
I-
and so far he's been very gracious, Augusta Health.
Yeah.
Next to the bank,
that might be another avenue. to
right,
find
a good
some-
match, right, and I stay out of that. I mean, I do my work behind the scenes, but I'm not with him when he's talking to his doctor or anything.
Right.
So that he'll accept whatever his doctor says.
Yep.
But I appreciate you telling me, what my options are, because I'm just inventing stuff that is not pretty.
Yeah, I don't advise, I mean, if you're gonna ask my personal opinion, I don't advise a ladder. And then the one you're talking about sounds even sketchier, even though it's supposed to be a.
Oh, I mean, if it's just a spring mounted thing, I wouldn't.
Yeah, it's a bit
No, no.
It's
It's like your shower rod, you know how you shower rod spring?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's gonna be.
Yeah. It says it can do 300 pounds, but that's like straight. up.
Yeah, that's
And what they do is, they're doing this.
Right.
And you know,
Right, falling, breaking an arm.
in ways, that just feels different and all around.
So I guess, like it goes back, we had to do this with my mom. She was bedridden for 9 years. We used a Hoyer lift.
Hoyer lifts, I
That
mean,
doesn't go to the floor. does
Well,
it?
that's what I was asking.
I don't think it goes quite to the floor. I think you can like get them low and you could possibly like get them,
Scooping into
get the mat under them and scoop them up with it.
But I think in this case,
Yeah.
if he's resistant to very minimal intervention, a Hoyer lift would not be
Yeah.
something that he would need.
But then until you run into a Hoyer lift is beast.
I know, it takes.
It is. Yeah.
So, for one, they're expensive, but you try to come up with our ideas that aren't mechanical, because when you come up with a mechanical idea.
At this point, it's essentially, I don't know if you're familiar with the Hoyer lift, but it's a device that goes straight up with a lift that comes out. It essentially has a little swing.
A trapeze kind of thing,
It looks like an engine hoist.
And so then with the time you get the pad under them and get everything connected and start lifting, they're lifting and it's kind of like a little swinging.
There's one for sale on Facebook Marketplace now. Where it's made to slide under the bed and you've got the little,
And
Yeah, it
actually,
has the legs that go under the bed so that you're going.
but I didn't know how to use it. If I got that.
Oh, there's
so I will
plenty of
tell
videos.
you, and I don't know why I just thought of this and all this conversation we're having. I have a patient on my program right now that her daughter went and looked on Amazon. It is on the higher end of things. I think it was $200-$300. It is a mat that if he's in that position, if he can lift enough where you can get the mat under him. You hit a button on it and it pushes up almost like a recliner chair. And that is what she used to help get her mother back into kind of a standing position. So you could put it under the knees or you could do it from behind. And I will get your contact information after this to get that link to you for something to look into, but she.
There's a
uses
thing you
that.
put on a car seat that kind of helps you. Is it that or is it a medical device?
No, this is just it's kind of like a lift mat. It's like a from the ground lift mat that you're able to hit a button and like Pam was saying, kind of a hydraulic where it gives enough. I don't remember how high it can raise up, but it gives enough of an incline push to get somebody back
Yeah.
up. So
That might be wheelchairs too.
might be something that you could use.
Cause I mean, like I said, you're not alone, people everywhere are working on this, so that it's not, because people they're worried that they're taxing the emergency care system, even though they are there and they understand.
Better than inflatable bed.
Everybody's looking for the perfect,
Right.
people are coming up with all kinds of things to try and
The
help in
people,
these situations.
people with the bed said they don't inflate evenly, and typically if there's a kid on the bed that's blowing up, the kid is pushed off. Because the bed doesn't inflate just straight up, it inflates in bubbles. And looked on Amazon for an inflatable bed, found one 20 inches high. It's perfect. But then the first review under it was somebody who said they wanted to use the bed for somebody that fell. Is that a good thing to do? And the manufacturer said, the pump is not that strong, you'll burn the pump and you've got a fire hazard. But a regular sleep number bed, you can lie on a mattress while it's inflating. But
So
I think
again,
you
I
have to
think
worry
this
about
advice would be good. I'd like to get, if you have an email or contact, I will get the link to you for that, because it was a lifesaving. And this particular patient, they were doing the same thing that you were. They were having to call, they live in a very rural part of the county. They were having to call the squad and waiting hours on end for the squad to get there to be able to get their loved one up. And so shortly after she took the chance, spent the money on this device, she's not had to call the squad since. They're able to use this because their parent was still able to have that upper body strength as your spouse does, and just get that little bit of an incline. So I don't know why I didn't think of that to start with, but
I'd like to have that information too.
inflatable mattresses are great for pressure relief.
Yeah.
But to use as mattresses in general, they're not, I don't. In my nursing career, I'm not feeling the greatest because they're, like I said, they're great for the skin and pressure relief. But they do move like, you know, like when you're sitting here, I've seen more patients slide on those. Because when you put a sheet on it or something, it just gets a little slide right with it.
Right.
And exercise caution with that. I'm not saying don't use them. Like I say, I'm by far not saying they're not great inventions because they're great for skin relief and pressure relief for people with pressure ulcers that are very frail people. But I don't recommend them as solutions for patients who are slide off the edge of the bed.
I think we're all just trying to find creative ways to make it work.
Yeah.
You know, again, it's a journey you've not been on either. And so if you don't have a handbook that says, okay, XYZ, this is how we go about doing this.
Seems like there ought to be something for getting. off the floor.
Absolutely.
Now, another handout I had in here was about bathing a patient while in bed. I think it's pretty straightforward. But you would be surprised people that come across never done it. So I did put in here just some instructions about giving the patient a bed and a bath in bed. Again, that's when a lot of the turning techniques come in handy. Once you get those tricks down, it's pretty similar. It's the same for changing the patient in the bed. If the linens get wet, that's why sometimes they do. That's where again we demonstrated changing the bed that's been sold with kind of handy. So this is just another FYI for your information. Pretty generic, but if you have any questions or struggles with that, you know, we're here to answer questions for that. Now, if you guys have any questions about supplies, anything like that? You guys pretty good at know where to get supplies.
The election prescriptions. I don't have any luck with any care at all.
Okay.
You were not the only one.
So you don't have any luck with
Lynn Care.
the product line? Or is that
The company, they won't even contact you back. You don't ever speak to somebody, you just leave a message. And they never call you back.
Okay.
You go there and they're closed, you know, it'll have a sign on there, you know, we'll return whenever, and it's. I just started dealing with.
And then in talking about transferring, I like to reiterate always, you're giving one back in a lifetime. Utilize it well. So, and you probably could speak to that, having back injuries. Always make sure you know how to lift when you're lifting. You know, it just goes back to the same basics of lifting, lift with your legs, not your back. You know, probably go down when you gotta lift something. Utilize your legs more. Especially when you're trying to transfer patients, things like that, and I'm sure they can all speak to that. As far as your back, you get one, it's. You heard it, it's never the same. So I'd always like to reiterate that when we get to talking about transfer and bed mobility, because you can even hurt your back just turning a patient in bed. Or just trying to pull them up in bed. So that's why we try to teach you techniques and tricks, to make it easier for you.
Any additional questions or concerns at this point that we haven't already touched on that may have come to mind for you all?
I had something happen. It's a little over 3 years ago. I was called very early in the morning, it was still dark, by a neighbor who needed assistance. And she said, "Are you dressed?" And I knew immediately something is wrong, because she would never call me like that. And I hastily went over, and she was sitting in the doorway, fallen and in the doorway. And it was pitch black. And she had damaged her foot and leg. It was all, I mean, it was every shade of black, blue, purple, almost magenta. And she would not allow me to call her first aid. She wouldn't allow me to call her. She has only one son, lives in Buchanan. She wouldn't let me call him. She wouldn't let me call anyone. She wanted me to do it. Now, she's a very large lady, very tall. And I managed with her, but then the second time that happened, it happened, she fell again, and I was called upon that time. And I have a dog. And I told her, I said, if I'm to help you, I said, you know, I have to have my dog with me if I have to stay the night with you. That was fine. But the thing of it was, it bothered me that she didn't want any relative to come help her and didn't want the first aid either. And I tried to be understanding and do for, but you know, when I went into the kitchen, and inside of her cabinet, when I was getting her something, I found where she had the number of her son. And I told her, I said, you know, somebody else needs to get involved. I'm not able to do this by myself. I did it for a week. But that second fall, I finally just had to call her son and tell him that she had fallen and she was stuck. And she didn't want any of her grandchildren called. I could understand because one was on deck. And she didn't want her there, and she didn't want any of the others. So since I didn't know their numbers anyway, and I didn't really know their last names, I didn't know how to contact anybody. So I was in a pickle. So I finally, I just told her, I just said, we just need to call him. And instead of him bringing his wife with him to assist, he came along. And I said, we need to get her to the doctor, first aid of some kind. I said, I think she ought to go to urgent care. It would see her fastest. And he had a truck, I have a SUV. So we get her into it, the two of us, and take her over there. And then they recommend a chair, you know. So I said, I took her over to the Lexington pharmacy, got her a chair. Do you know that woman would not use that chair? But I hurt my back so badly when we came back and she was in the wheelchair and she had to be hoisted up over a step onto the porch. And with only her son and myself lifting this heavy woman, I hurt myself so bad. When I had to tell my son who works in the hospital, and he said, I forbid you to go and do that again. He said, you're not. He said, I said, well, I'm just doing my Christian duty. He said, I forbid you. He said, you cannot do that. You're going to get yourself down. So I finally found out that, after I stepped away and they got involved, they put a sign up on the gate and said, no trespassing. We've been friends for decades and decades and decades. But at that point, I stepped back and I did not go to the house again. When I tried to speak to one of them, was outside and asked about her condition. And that thing hurt me so badly because I know all they're doing is leaving that poor woman in this house. And they send one person down there several times a week. They go in for about 5 minutes. They go when her check comes and they get her money and she'll have it. She used to go and buy all these sweets and things so that they would come and the table would be just full of sweets and soft drinks. And they would come in and get her stuff and they'd come for get her money and she would let them have her money. But I just had to back away.
Unfortunately, that's a really terrible situation to be in, but what we find also with patients, especially those who are still clear and competent, similar to your husband's situation, patients, if they understand the risk of the situation they're in, but if that is still the situation that they want to be in, there's only so much that we can do on our ends. Certainly have concern, and it sounds like this has caused you a deep hurt with how you have been treated, how you cared for her. But patients are allowed, people are allowed to say, I'm living in a situation that most of us would not want to live in, whether it's because I don't have caregiver support, I can't maintain my home and keep it clean to the standards it should be, I don't have access to getting out and getting things that I need, but patients are still clear and able to make the decision of I understand the risk that I'm living in and I want to be in a situation. She has the right to refuse that.
She has the right,
Turn it
yes,
away.
absolutely. And I said, I thought, I knew that her mother had Alzheimer's. And she was a very, very handsome person. And she had Alzheimer's and she had gone to and took care of her while she was at the nursing home. But I know that she does not want to go to a nursing home. And I've always said to my children, I don't want to be in a nursing home. I'm not going to be the first one in my family to ever have to go to a nursing home. I'm staying in my home and I'll let you know that right straight up. So I could understand how she feels. And, I used to go to the library and she'd go to the library. We exchange reading materials, things. But what I feel badly that she doesn't have anybody doing that sort of thing for her anymore. And I've wrestled with it, but it's I just had to come to the point, it's her decision to let them do her that way.
It's always, at that point, it's a choice, and you have to kind of make peace with it and step back and.
So I turn to my piano, when things get really rough, something like that.
Coming back to those kind of coping and how we're doing that.
Yeah.
We also have information in here on how to prevent skin breakdown. I don't know if any of you have run into any issues with your patient that you take care of or loved one that you take care of. That has skin breakdown. Or worries of skin breakdown, whether it be due to the nutrition that they take in or lack of nutrition they take in or incontinence issues. A lot of that plays a part. Nutrition wise, if someone's not taking in enough protein, things like nourishment, not bad foods, but good nourishing foods, some with a lot of protein. That helps with maintaining muscle, strength of the body, and helps with healing if they do get any kind of wounds, skin tears from bumping into things, transfer into things. As they get older, the skin gets more frail and easier to break down, much less if they have any kind of skin condition, eczema or breakout of rashes often, and people that are larger have folds, have folds that need to be washed, cleaned, make sure they're kept dry. Frequent, if someone's bed bound, they're more prone to skin breakdown. That's why we reiterate, they need to be repositioned at least every 2 hours, whether it be side to side. Getting them up in a chair, just changing all those positions. If they can't move any of themselves, just making sure you're looking at those pressure points, ears, elbows, heels, toes, knees, any of that. People don't realize when you're in the bed how much your heels rub against the bed, and particularly like if you get hospital sheets, they're a lot more starchy. And the mattress itself too is not the greatest, not like a Serta or a Sleep Number bed, kind of mattress. So there's a lot of tricks to helping prevent those that are patients that are bed bound. You can elevate their feet. Put pillows like behind their legs, not under their knee. Making sure the pillow's not under their knee to cut off circulation or anything like that. And you get the pillow and have it between like the calf and the heel. You can have them floating, call it like floating heels, but they're on the pillow. You got them on they're like this. So consider my elbow as like my knee, my feet here. So that way the heels aren't rubbing or constantly sitting on bed. But
And even for patients, like again, in your case, who are still ambulatory, if you're finding these friction rubs, friction burns, places where, he's trying to get up, sliding against the carpet, just be conscientious again of those places as they present, because the skin is frail and they can turn into something more serious. There are good barrier creams. Your patient who is using the have good barrier creams for skin protection too. Again, that's the prescription, probably due to the family pharmacy to help with just protecting the skin and keeping it dry. We provide the best care possible in some of those friction places. It's, beginning of sores, they can happen for anybody, no matter how good of care we provide. It's just disease progression.
Yeah, a lot of times that ends up, if somebody has extremely poor nutrition, no matter what you do, you can have breakdown. Because that fat tissue, extra tissue cushioning, we all it's just diminished along with the muscle mass, which just leaves a lot of skin. Sometimes people are on blood thinners and makes their skin more frail, and steroids make their skin more frail.
What about diabetics?
Yeah.
Have you ever
diabetics in
seen-
particular.
Have you ever seen where someone had just a lot of places on their arms that are really red and they just constantly scratch at it?
That could be a lot of different things. Yeah, I mean, that's why I was talking about, some people are prone to either skin infections or they just have a nervous habit or medications that might cause them to itch. Kidney disease can cause them to itch. So some people tend to get sore from scratching. Some people that are on long-term pain medication can have a side effect of itching. So that can be caused from that. Main thing is making sure you're discouraging that. Try lotions that are aimed at that don't have a lot of alcohol in them. More of a moisturizer. Which I strongly recommend for anybody was, when you're taking care of a loved one that's going to be bed bound, chair bound, or not even chair bound, but maybe sit a lot. Keeping those areas moisturized. Like you said, there's protective barrier for there when you start to have reddened areas develop. Somebody's had diarrhea for a while, for a couple of days, and everybody's prone to a stomach bug. Or if they've gone through a UTI where they're wetting a lot. You want to make sure you're keeping them changed, repositioned, that area cleaned frequently, and then
A Cossack's cushion works well as well.
yes.
That little hole.
Yep, you can get cushions for seats that help people, like I said, if you're getting up and moving, but yet you're still someone that's probably to sit in a lot or sedentary. You can get cushions for that. They do make, I brought one, I'm going to bring two.
Yeah, I think that's what I call it. Yeah.
Questions or something?
Or some of our other patients, some patients, I've seen these used in a lot of people that are a little more frail, further stages of like failure to thrive or not doing well in their disease process, but we've used them. And they go on the heel, but I've seen them used on elbows too. But they're like Velcro like this. And if somebody bumps their elbows a lot on the rails or hits their arm.
Or using it again as a pressure place to lift yourself up, scooching in the bed, you can find those places with.
But technically they were meant for heels, but they're multi-use. So, you rest your heel in it like this, and you can like Velcro it across. If you have a hard time with floating heels. Or people do this and float heels. Or like I said, you can use it on the elbow. So. These are great, you can get them pretty much. Amazon, that's a lot of work.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Nutrition is a big key thing, but as we all realize, when you're aging, nutrition is to go downhill. You don't really want to eat, or you get fixated on something to eat, and it's not really what you need to eat, but it's all you can get in. That happens. So supplements are out there. If you can push supplements, they make them in all kinds of forms now, pudding, your shakes, ice cream pops, all kinds of ways. Powders that you can put over the food or in the food. So again, like I say, there's lots of options out there for nutrition.
And I think just to kind of tie in, then recognizing when it's time to start looking for some supports, because our journey is changing a little bit. Oftentimes we really feel that treatment needs to be very aggressive. We're looking for the next cure-all, what's going to make this better, and there's not always an answer for that. Sometimes it's just, this is our natural course. Disease progressions are changing, and how can we help that journey be a little smoother? And so part of what our agency offers is the Connections Plus program for patients who aren't quite there for hospice support yet, or not either ready for it, or their disease progression is not at a place where it's appropriate for that level of care. The Connections allows for patients who are dealing with a serious illness, or they've received a diagnosis that may be life-limiting, to have a little bit of extra education and support, because sometimes supplements are not the answer. Sometimes an extra medication is not the answer. Sometimes we are then looking at starting the next part of our journey, which is having good quality of life, good comfort care, and allowing for patients to be comfortable where they are at. And so I would encourage for any of you, your caregiving role, and people who are looking for a little bit of additional support, you can talk with your physicians. They have information on Connections. We can do a consult at any point in time to provide additional information, but it is a program that will allow for you all as caregivers to have a little bit of extra support, and then guidance on this is the journey that we're on, and recognizing that some of what we're seeing, the appetite changes, skin changes, overall mood changes are normal to the disease progression that patient is currently dealing with.
Also, we've got a handout in here regarding aromatherapy. That's one of the alternate therapies we offer. The aromatherapy, which could be for your benefit as much as the patient. It's since a lot of the information on here can say about scents that they use for to help calm, their scents for there's agitation or poor appetite or muscle soreness, digestion issues, things like that.
Essential oils are a good non-medicinal approach to, symptom relief for those who maybe are looking for an extra medication. We will sometimes put those in lotions, or A's will put in lotions and do hand massage, something that can be relaxing, helpful, and just the fragrance. Sometimes we'll use various essential oils to help combat nausea, patient restlessness.
They can, like she said, they can turn drugs, oils that can be diffused, oils that can be rubbed on. There's numerous ways to get that, to get these supplies, people that sell them. You can actually go to Walmart and buy essential oils now and diffusers. But it's also a good alternative, because like I say, sometimes you get to the point where, you know, another pill, like she said, another pill is not the answer. Sometimes you wonder, like, is all these pills really doing what they're supposed to do, or all these pills, what's making me feel bad? I've had a patient even say that before.
So with that being said, good coordination again with the physician. A lot of patients have been taking medications for umpteen years, and because the doctor told them and that's what they needed. But our bodies are also then changing. So I would really encourage you all to not just take them at face value, talk with the physician. Are all of these still relevant? You know, if it's been a blood pressure issue and there's still blood pressure medication, do we really still need this, or is this contributing to some of the problems that we're seeing with falls and issues that we're having at home? You know, not that every medication needs to be taken off, but as we age and as things change, the medication that was good for us 20 years ago may not be beneficial and is actually causing some of our issues that, you know, currently.
But definitely do that in consultation with your doctor.
Yeah, because I would encourage people, you know, the term polypharmacy is a real term. And it's where multiple patients, you know, are on multiple meds. And you do start to wonder, especially nowadays where the providers get, or you get to that point in your life where you're seeing a cardiologist and a pulmonologist and a urologist. And before you know it, you know, you've got a doctor for every part, but they're not always, you know, they're focused on your lungs or whoever, you know, whichever specialty it is. You know, communication is key. But I encourage you to read about polypharmacy as you take care of a loved one, just so that you're familiar with it, because it's not above you just as a regular person to question this medication. Everybody should know their medication, the name of it, what it's for. And, you know, is it a long-term thing? Do I have to be on this? You know, be an active part of your care plan, be an advocate for the patients you're caring for. Because like I say, you know, you can't get to the point where there's too many meds or what's relevant at this point. Does anybody in here have a caregiver, a loved one that they're taking, using oxygen? I put some information in here if you do come across or your loved one actually ends up on some oxygen, how to handle. That's some safety tips and using oxygen. The biggest thing is if you don't have, I mean, I'd be glad to demonstrate how to hook one up or cut it on, things like that, if you're interested in that. There's different forms. Like some people, most people familiar with is the nasal cannula, which goes in the little problems that go in the nose. Some people have a mask. It's usually a further stage progression for people with breathing difficulties or at the end of life. Usually at the end of life, if you're comfortable with it, people aren't necessarily on that oxygen unless it's making them comfortable. But the biggest things to walk away from was this no flame. You know, don't keep them near flames. Don't smoke. And no matter how many times you see people that do that, it's wrong. And they'll be ashamed to call them out on it. You know, if you in someone's home and they start to smoke and you're in there visiting them and they've got oxygen on, you can say, don't, if you might do that when I'm not here, but I appreciate, you know.
Just as a side piece on that, even if they do turn the concentrator itself off, they remove the tubing away, you know, the oxygen residue still stays in there and can ignite.
Even if
So
it's
Start fire.
I didn't realize
so drag.
about the creams and lotions.
yeah,
You
you're all
can't get that around it.
you have to watch any kind of aerosol, you know, just Vaseline and stuff on your lips, petroleum base.
Yeah, I know, I knew that. I never thought about it.
Watch it around like electrical appliances because they could spark. And you don't think about it, but you know, if your microwave sparks or if you're not sure if you're electrical and plug something in and it's spark. You know, where we all go. You know, paper rolls. Things like that. Make sure if you have oxygen at home. Storage is very important. If it's gonna be upright like this, it has to be in a stand. Because this basically is, if something happens, Lord willing, I have not seen this, thank Lord. Can be a missile, basically. So it's very important that you handle it responsibly. When you usually get them, I'm running into, I don't know if this is the norm, but I've run into a couple patients where they're given their oxygen and not really told what to do. That's why I brought it up. I bring it in, set it down, and I demonstrated on what to do. Like this is here, well, that's fine. What do I do when it's empty? How do I get it on the next one? Because this, which is the regulator, has to come off and go on the next one. But there's a process.
Yeah, I remember when my mother-in-law had it, just turning it up isn't gonna help you. That would actually hurt you. You know, turning up the, I don't know, the pressure or whatever it is, you know, like if she was having trouble breathing. You know, you'd have to watch her. Is that right? That if you turn it up too much, that it could actually harm you?
Well, that depends on what you're upgoing oxygen for, because your patients that have like COPD, emphysema, if they are a CO2 retainer, which I know this is big terms, but there are diseases where you're not, you know, when you're breathing in, you're getting rid of the CO2. Well, some people are called what they call CO2 retainers. Where they're not able to get rid of it.
better.
Yeah,
So more is not always better.
that's what she
That's
had.
her.
She had COPD and emphysema, yeah.
So, yeah, you have to make sure that if you're ever in a situation where you feel the need, if it needs to be turned up, it needs to be regulated by, you need to clear that with somebody and know what they're actually taking their oxygen for. But you have the regulator that goes on the tanks here. They have to be in a stand. Make sure, you know, that if they bring extras and they're not in the stand, which they shouldn't be, lay them down. Make sure they're not gonna roll around, clank, things like that. Don't leave them in your car, in a hot car or a cold car. This here is like the nasal cannula. That's telling you about. You have the end that has the two prongs that go in, and you have the tubing end that hooks onto the tree here. We used to call it trees, but it's not trees on here anymore, but the prong here. And then you would turn the knob. They're much more easier to use than they used to be. They used to have this awful other kind of regulator on that was a lot more not as stable. It would leak a lot worse. If you hook up oxygen for somebody or turn it on, used to be you had a key crank, and some still service you with a key crank one. Majority have this kind of regulator on the top, where you have this key right here, because people would lose the little black key that goes on it to turn it. But when you turn this, if you hear a sound, it's leaking. Just turn it off. Call the oxygen company immediately, let them know that you got a leak in the tank. Especially if you're in a situation where you need that thing. But there again, I go to, there's a section that talks about planning ahead. Make sure you're not in a situation where you only have this tank to rely on. If there's something wrong with the concentrator, go to that. If you're going out and about with somebody, make sure that how much oxygen they're on is compatible for how much oxygen this tank will cover. When you're on like 2 to 4 liters of oxygen continuous, this tank doesn't last but like 4 I would say 4 to 8 hours at the most. So the little tanks, couple of 2 hours. Sometimes they'll bring you what they call the little tanks that are easier to carry for some patients. So just make sure you're aware of that. And if they come and bring your patient, I keep want to say patient, I'm sorry, but your loved one oxygen at some point. Don't let them just leave without giving you any kind of lessons or talking to for their equipment. Most of the time when they bring their equipment in, they're gonna have their sticker on there too, that gives their name and number. There's somebody to service that 24 hours, so if there's ever a problem, whether it be this or a concentrator, which hooks up to electricity, which is what people that are on continuously at home use. This is for like if you're going out and about. Yeah, they'll take that for nature, they'll. Sometimes they send delivery people, or the delivery people are responsible, just watch the government people let you know what you get and how to handle it. With oxygen tubing, make sure you don't have more than 50 feet. There's people that want tubing and they want to be able to just walk all over the house. But you get more than 50 feet, really shorter than that. And you decrease the amount of oxygen they're getting. So like if they're on 2 liters and you decrease the feet of oxygen increase the oxygen too, and like you get people that want to put together 8 strands of 10 feet, just so they can walk the yard and not have to worry about the tank.
That's what my mother-in-law did. I mean, she had it, she would carry it rolled up.
You can decrease it by 50%.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, you have to be careful with.
And it's a tripping hazard.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
you're not gonna jump rope with it.
Yeah, she would carry it rolled up, like you do a garden hose. She would carry it and then she would just do this. She passed now, but yeah, she called it her dog.
And always make sure if oxygen comes into your home, that you have smoke detector, which you should have in your home anyway, fire alarm, which you should have in your home anyway, and a fire extinguisher. But.
So as we are coming to closure here, any additional questions or concerns? Anything else you'd like to share?
It's been helpful.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Bear with us. We try to kind of piecemeal this together and so.
And I'm not the best public speaker, so
You've done.
Grace, please. I'm a nurse first and foremost, so like I'm great one-on-one, but when I start getting in front of the crowd, I tend to mumble my words or get to talking in my medical terms and just go right off like.
You did very good. I think you did well.
We hope that there
Thank
is at least one piece of information you can take away from this that makes your job as a caregiver a little bit easier. And again, big pat on the back, give yourself a big hug because it is difficult. It's not easy, and you are probably going to continue to face challenges that you didn't know that you'd be able to get through, but you can. And there are resources out there to help. So certainly feel free to give us a call if you're not sure, and we will try to point you in the right direction.